create a strategic vision and plan, establish overall policy and policy by which the school is administered and are managed, assure financial stability through fiscal and financial oversight and be accountable for the financial health of the school, institute and promote fundraising efforts for the school and ensure that the school has appropriate resources to effectively implement the strategic plan and execute the day-to-day school operations. There's a lot here, and so we often get help as well. We often delegate some of these functions to designated individuals or committees. The Stargate board consists, per the bylaws, of 5 parent members up to 4 independent members. The parent members are elected by the Stargate community, and they serve a 3-year term. If there's a vacancy, for example, we had a vacancy earlier this year where we appointed someone to fill in that vacancy. That board member that gets appointed will serve just until the next election. Independent board members are appointed by the board. This is your current board.
Do you allow to ask questions during your presentation?
So if we can, I'd like you to hold questions just because the questions may be answered during the presentation. And so if you can, hopefully we'll make sure to address your questions though if they aren't answered, okay? Okay, thank you. So there are various types of meetings that we as a board have. We have business meetings, which are used to conduct the business of the school. It requires a quorum, which for us requires at least 3 or more board members. Motions can be made. Notice of at least 24 hours must be given prior to the meeting to the community, and public comment is permitted. Now, with respect to public comment, the board cannot act on or respond to matters presented during public comment, but that may be followed up by appropriate staff or board members contacting you to make sure that your concerns or comments are addressed. We take minutes of the meetings to reflect the record of the board's decisions, but the minutes are not meant to be a transcript of the entire board meeting. We also have planning meetings. These are meetings that are similar to business meetings, except a couple key differences. One being that we don't make any decisions at a planning meeting. So we don't make any motions, and we also don't take minutes at those meetings because no decisions are being made. We also have executive sessions, and these are used for confidential discussions regarding specific topics that are specified under Colorado law. The statute here is Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024, and the reason that we might have an executive session can include legal matters, personnel matters, discussions of individual students. This also requires a quorum. Motions may not be made, so we do not make any decisions at an executive session. We still are required to provide the same notice 24 hours before the meeting, and in most cases, those executive sessions must be recorded, and we are required to keep those recordings for 90 days. We're going to move on to the relationship with Adams 12. So Adams 12, 5-star school district, is the authorizer of Stargate's charter. And so just wanted to highlight what these terms mean. The charter is the legal agreement that sets the expectations for the school and authorizer over the term of the charter. It defines both the school's right to manage the school and the authorizer's monitoring and oversight responsibilities. The authorizer is the entity granting the charter. In Colorado, the authorizer is generally the local school district, but in some cases, it is actually the state via the Colorado Charter School Institute. Adams 12 5-star school district is our authorizer, and they provide certain support services to Stargate in the form of central administrative support, standardized test materials, and they also provide some human resources support. Adams 12 does not provide day-to-day operational support for Stargate and does not oversee personnel matters, performance evaluations, or staff compensation. Our charter with Adams 12 is renewed every 5 years. And the last time we renewed the charter was back in 2014, and we renewed that charter with an amendment to allow for the expansion from the K-8 school to now a K-12 school. Our charter is up for renewal in 2019, and we have already started planning for the renewal process and have begun discussions with the district regarding our renewal. Communicating with the board. So how should you communicate with the board? One way is public comment. Now, as I mentioned before, the board cannot act or respond to matters presented during public comment, but we certainly hear what you say at public comment, and so these are things that may be followed up by the entire board, a particular board member, if it's delegated to that person. It might be 2 people, or we can delegate staff or other individuals to get back to you. The communication pathways, and this is for complaints. The communication pathways is something that has been developed over the last few years, and it is a step-by-step process, an escalation process, to handle complaints. And there's actually 3 different communication pathways. There's one for the elementary school, one for the secondary school, and there's a separate communications pathways for athletics and clubs. In most cases, or actually in all cases, the communication pathways starts with the person that you have an issue with. And ultimately it ends with the board. And the board can be contacted through the website. But these communication pathways are on the website, and it is very critical that they are followed, because these are ways that we can ensure that, one, we are informed. People who are involved in an issue, by contacting those folks, it is much more likely that you're going to get a resolution that is quick, efficient, productive. So we really do implore you to use the communication pathways. General questions also can be emailed at any time to the board at governance@stargateschool.org. That email goes to all of the board members, and typically we will designate one specific board member to respond to you. I just wanted to show you here the various communication pathways. I don't expect that you can actually see the detail in here. This is the one for the elementary school. Here's the one for the secondary school. And here's the one for athletics and clubs. As I mentioned, they always start with the person that you have a concern that you would like to get addressed, and then ultimately there's an escalation process that leads to the board. These are on our website, so please make sure that you're familiar with the communication pathways. Okay, so OCR complaint status. So what we wanted to do is make sure, I know there's been a lot of questions and a lot of discussions regarding the various OCR complaints that we've had at the school. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to review each of the OCR complaints so that you understand what these are about. Now, one of the things that I need to be very clear about is that we can discuss these at a high level. We cannot provide specifics with respect to any students. We can't provide any information about community members that are involved. From a board standpoint, there are issues with respect to privacy and confidentiality. I know that some OCR documents have been posted on social media by certain individuals. Typically it might be the complainant. I'm not sure who's posting them. It's not the board who's posting them. And if the person who actually made the complaint wants to post the information that they received, they certainly have the right to do so. But as a board and as a school, we're not going to provide information regarding the specifics about an individual student or a community member. So just a little bit of background. So what is the Office of Civil Rights? We will refer to it as the OCR throughout this presentation. And what role does it play in schools? So within schools, the OCR ensures that all students and families are treated fairly, regardless of race, religious differences, disabilities, physical and otherwise, or gender. There are various laws that the OCR enforces. Title IX, which relates to discrimination on the basis of sex. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or origin. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1974, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. The Age Discrimination Act of 1975, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of age. Title II of the American with Disabilities Act of 1990, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. The Boy Scouts of America Equal Access Act that was enacted as part of the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, and this prohibits denial of access or other discrimination against the Boy Scouts or other Title 36 USC youth groups in public schools or education systems with open access. Okay, so we're going to go through each of the OCR complaints. So the first OCR complaint, number 1. The complaint, the allegation, was that Stargate discriminated against a student on the basis of disability and national origin. This was filed back in January 12, 2017. And let me say, what we're going to do for each of these is we're going to give you a summary of the complaint, we'll give you a summary of the findings, and then we'll talk about what the OCR required or what we as a school are required to do to address the concerns and where we stand with respect to each of those items. So with respect to this complaint, on July 11, 2017, the OCR issued its findings stating that the school violated Section 504 in Title II, specifically failed to evaluate the student in a timely manner, made unilateral placement decisions for the student rather than a group of people knowledgeable about the student as required by Section 504, and failed to conduct a manifestation determination before significantly changing the student's placement. So what does that mean in terms of what is the OCR asking us to do? So the first thing they asked us to do was to provide training to our staff about non-discrimination to include evaluations, placements, implementation of IEPs, and 504s. This training has been completed and confirmed by the OCR. There is no further action required. We also are required to send a memo to the staff regarding non-discrimination based on disability, race, color, or national origin. This memo has also been sent and confirmed by the OCR. We have ongoing monitoring requirements, and so we need to report to the OCR all special ed referrals for evaluations made between July 15, 2017 through December 31st, 2017. And we have completed that monitoring report. It has been provided to the OCR, and there's no further action required. There's further monitoring that we need to do with respect to reporting to OCR all special ed referrals for evaluations made between January 1, 2018 and May 31, 2018. And as that period has not expired yet, that is still in process. Our report is due to the OCR on June 30th of 2018. We had to provide compensatory services to the student, and those services have been provided to the student and confirmed by the OCR. There is no further action required. OCR complaint 2. There was an allegation that Stargate has admissions and enrollment policies and practices that result in a different treatment of and a disparate impact on students with disabilities. The specific objection was to Stargate's then current admission form asking whether students had IEPs or 504s before confirmation of eligibility and admission lottery. This was filed on February 28, 2017. And the OCR conducted an analysis of our admissions data. We provided data showing that in 2015 to 2016 and 2016 to 2017 school years, the percentage of applicants who were considered in regular education as compared to the students who were or known to be either IEPs or 504s, that the percentages that were qualified, that there was not any statistical differences. It was 64% versus 63%. The OCR, though, prior to completion of its investigation, the school actually agreed to voluntarily address the allegation. We attempted to address the OCR's concerns. And so the OCR actually didn't even complete the full investigation as we entered into a resolution agreement on August 22nd, 2017. So what we did, and what was required by us, is that the staff had to be trained about non-discrimination at time of admission. That staff training has been completed. We have sent the report to the OCR. We are currently waiting on confirmation from the OCR of the completion of the training. All admissions documents had to be updated with non-discrimination language, Section 504, Title II coordinators, and removal of any requests for information related to disability or for special education records. All of those documents, including all of our web pages, have been updated and confirmed by the OCR. There is no further action required. Our community handbook was to be updated to indicate that Stargate does not discriminate against students with disabilities in recruitment and admissions. The handbook has been appropriately updated. That has been confirmed by the OCR, and there's no further action required. The school to submit to OCR for review and approval written guidance designed to ensure non-discrimination in the enrollment of students with disabilities, and documentation showing new guidance disseminated to staff. That new guidance and documentation was sent to and approved by the OCR, and there's no further action required. Excuse me. The school is to provide all provide to the OCR all reports, grievances, or complaints from parents regarding disability discrimination in recruitment or admissions from August 1st, 2017 through August 31st of 2018. And this is currently in process, and it is due to be provided to the OCR October 1st of 2018. OCR complaint number 3. There was an allegation that Stargate denied a student a free, appropriate public education by failing to implement the student's Section 504 plan and failed to respond appropriately to sexual harassment of the student by a peer. This was filed on May 24th, 2017. On October 11th, 2017, the OCR issued its findings stating that there was insufficient evidence to support the complainant's allegations and therefore was closing the case. OCR complaint number 4. This complaint alleged that Stargate failed to promptly and equitably respond to a report that a student at the school had sexually assaulted another student off campus. This was filed June 7th, 2017. On December 1st, 2017, the OCR issued its findings, stating that the evidence support conclusions that Stargate violated Title IX by failing to adequately investigate and redress the school-based effects and hostile environment resulting from the reported sexual harassment, failing to implement adequate interim safety measures in a timely manner, failing to eliminate the hostile environment and safeguard against retaliation, failing to have a Title IX coordinator, and failing to ensure that the necessary staff were trained on Title IX. As a resolution, we were required to identify, train, and communicate an individual to serve as Stargate's Title IX coordinator. Our CFO, Lynn Allen, has been designated as the interim Title IX coordinator. She has attended multiple training sessions, and we are going to be designating a permanent Title IX coordinator prior to the 2018-2019 school year.
Can I just real quick on that one? That being that Lynn is going to help this new person along, because you can't just stop Lynn doing it when the new person doesn't have a clue about the job.
Right. The person that will be assigned to that either will already be experienced or will receive training, and if necessary, there will be an overlap to make sure that no one is starting a position who is not fully prepared to take on that position.
Thank you.
We had to have all staff be trained on Title IX harassment and sex discrimination. We have sent draft training materials to the OCR for review, and we are waiting for the OCR to provide us with feedback on those materials. We had to create a Title IX discrimination report form, and that report form, including some revisions that went out later, have been sent to the OCR for approval, and we are still waiting confirmation from the OCR as they review that report form. We had to offer safety and support services to the impacted students. Those students are currently receiving support from our school counselors. We have to provide OCR all reports, grievances, or complaints regarding peer-on-peer sexual harassment among school students from the period December 1st, 2017 through May 31st, 2018, and that is in process. We are due to provide that report on June 22nd, 2018. OCR complaint number 5. There was an allegation that Stargate failed to promptly and equitably respond to alleged sexual harassment of female high school students by their coach, despite being on notice of the alleged harassment. This was filed on June 28, 2017. On December 13, 2017, the OCR issued its findings, stating that the weight of the evidence supports conclusions that the school violated Title IX by failing to promptly and equitably respond to alleged sexual harassment of female high school students by their coach, despite being on notice of the alleged harassment, failing to designate a Title IX coordinator, failing to adequately disseminate notification of its policy against sex discrimination, and failing to adequately publish its Title IX grievance procedures. As the resolution required by the OCR, we were required to develop policy, procedure, and process for filing complaints of sex discrimination. We created a policy that mirrors Adams 12 District Policy 8400 and clarifying information. We have sent that to the OCR for review, and that review is currently pending. Upon OCR approval, we have to communicate the procedure and information to the community in both English and Spanish, and as our policy is still being reviewed by the OCR, that is also still pending. We had to provide to OCR for proposed staff training materials on Title IX discrimination and harassment. We have provided to the OCR draft training materials, and those materials are also currently pending review and approval by OCR. We had to provide OCR all reports, grievances, and complaints related to Title IX by June 22nd, 18. That's one reporting period. And then we have to do it again by January 25th, 2019. Those are still in process, as those due dates have not yet come. We have to submit for OCR review and approval plans for secondary school assembly related to sexual harassment, including how to recognize and report sexual harassment, and then we need to conduct that assembly following OCR's approval. The plans for the proposed assembly have been sent to the OCR, and we are still waiting for the OCR to provide us with feedback. We had to offer counseling to all of the former players for the fall 2015 and fall 2016 semesters, inviting them to speak to school counseling staff about any inappropriate behavior by the former coach, and that counseling has been offered to the former players and reported to the OCR. Complaint 6. There was an allegation that Stargate retaliated against a staff member by constructively discharging the employee after engaging in activity protected by Section 504, Title II, and Title IX, filed on June 6, 2017. The OCR conducted an investigation, and prior to completion of the investigation, the school agreed to voluntarily address the allegation and entered into a resolution agreement on December 21st, 2017. As part of that resolution, the school board is to submit to OCR for review and approval a staff climate survey to gauge whether an environment of retaliation exists Following OCR approval of the survey, the board is to administer the survey, report the results to the district and OCR, and submit to OCR for approval proposed remedial measures to ensure non-discrimination, including non-retaliation, if necessary. The proposed survey has been submitted to OCR for approval, and we are waiting for feedback from the OCR. The school is to submit to OCR for review and approval a written policy on procedures for filing complaints of discrimination, including retaliation. The school is to disseminate that policy following OCR approval and confirm dissemination to the OCR. That draft policy has been submitted to the OCR, and we are awaiting feedback. We are to provide to OCR for approval proposed staff training materials on retaliation and discrimination, and then we are supposed to administer that training, follow OCR's approval, and confirm that training to the OCR. The draft training materials have been submitted to the OCR, and OCR feedback is currently pending. We have to timely respond to inquiries from the complainant's prospective employers and provide an agreed-upon reference letter. By May 31st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018, we are to provide an update to the OCR on the requested reference checks and our responses, and that is in process as those dates have not yet come. We are to provide the employee with money for annual health insurance deductible and for lost wages and confirm the payments to OCR by December 31st, 2018. All required payments have been made and confirmed to the OCR. Complaint 7. There's been an allegation that Stargate discriminated against a student on the basis of disability. Specifically, the complainant alleged that Stargate denied the student a free appropriate public education by failing to evaluate and place the student in a timely manner, failing to implement the student's 504 plan, failing to implement the student's individualized education program, and failing to conduct a manifestation determination before significantly changing the student's placement. This was filed February 25th, 2018. And the current status or the current findings is there's none at this time. We first learned of this complaint just 2 weeks ago, and we have yet to receive from the OCR any information regarding the specific allegations related to this matter. When we do, we will fully cooperate with the OCR. Moving forward, Stargate has resolved all of the OCR complaints other than this latest, complaint 7. And we are currently in the monitoring phase of each resolved case. We have fully cooperated with the OCR through the process and drafted new policies, procedures, and systems to ensure future compliance. We have increased our staffing and services for twice exceptional students. We have developed training for all staff and administration around Title II, Title IX, Section 504, and admissions, assigned an on-campus Title IX officer, and added non-discrimination language to all of our materials. While we are certainly not proud of the high level of OCR complaints, as a board and administration, we see this check and balance as a systems audit that we welcome to make our school the best it can be moving forward. We have seen growth and change this year as we implemented all of these new policies for the betterment of our students and the strengthening of our overall community. I want to acknowledge that there have been missteps. And one of the things that I think is important when we look at where we are today versus where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of the OCR complaints have come because we honestly lacked policies and procedures and rigor to address these issues. This isn't something that has been caused or is the result of the current administration. This is something that goes back our existence, 24 years. We haven't had all of these policies. But what we are doing, we can't go back in time. So what's the important thing is, what are we doing now? What are we doing to make sure that these issues don't repeat? What are we doing to make sure that we are ensuring that our students have an environment that does not have discrimination, that that there is no harassment of any kind? We're putting together policies and procedures to try and address those situations so we don't find ourselves in this situation in the future with respect to additional OCR complaints. And it's not just OCR complaints, it's just making sure that we have an environment that is safe and inviting for our students. Community questions. So, a couple of things. I'm going to try to go through these questions. Actually, there are some questions about whether or not we answered all the questions, and the answer is no, we haven't answered all the questions. We received a lot of questions, and in the interest of time, we tried to pick the questions that we felt were of interest to the community at large. There were some questions that we received that actually were not appropriate for this forum and had very specific information about particular students or particular staff members, and due to privacy and confidentiality, we did not address those questions. There were some questions that did have some information or some information about individual students or individual community members that we thought were good questions, so we tried to genericize those a little bit so it didn't include the specific information about the student. If your question isn't answered, it doesn't mean that we don't want to answer it. It means that we felt that there were other questions that were more appropriate. We also wanted to make sure that everyone had their voice heard. There were some individuals or families that posted a lot of questions. And so we certainly tried to address some, but we wanted to make sure that we were addressing the questions of the entire community. So if your question is not answered, again, I can stay afterwards, but the best is email us, and we will certainly attempt to address your questions. First question was, who contributed to the creation of this town hall presentation? For example, questioning selection, PowerPoint slide creation, script writing, plans for fielding questions. So myself, Brad Schoenfeld, and Elizabeth Williams, we were delegated by the board to create this presentation. We worked in consultation with the executive director, our legal counsel, and the rest of the board reviewed the presentation prior to this town hall. Did the board respond to each and every question that was submitted for the finance town hall as well? They asked this, and this board communications town hall. No, we did not. We received many questions that related to similar topics, and we attempted to consolidate those questions. We also received some questions that we believed were not appropriate for this forum, including questions that related to specific students or community members, which we cannot address due to privacy and confidentiality reasons. And as I mentioned, if any member of the Stargate community submitted a question that was not answered, please, we invite you to contact the board directly. Why has it taken so long for the board to provide the community with information about the OCR cases? We did not feel it was appropriate to inform the community about particular allegations until investigations were conducted and findings were determined. The board has included high-level updates at a number of its meetings. However, we realize that communications could have been better, especially since not all community members are able to regularly attend board meetings. How is the board ensuring that we are meeting all of the OCR requirements and deadlines? The board is working directly with the administration and the school's legal counsel to monitor all of our compliance requirements and ensuring that we are timely meeting our obligations. Why was the executive director not put on administrative leave as a result of the OCR complaints? Administrative leave is not a requirement in these situations. It is implemented in circumstances when it is believed that the continued presence of the individual would be detrimental to the school or would jeopardize an investigation. The board felt it was in the best interest of the school for the executive director to continue to provide support to Stargate. Is it true that one of the Stargate board members was involved in the events related to an OCR complaint, and did this create a conflict of interest? We cannot discuss specifics regarding any particular parent's or student's involvement. However, if there was a board member or his or her family involved, he or she would be required to immediately inform the board and to recuse himself or herself from any discussions or actions related to the complaint. Any involved board member has fully complied with this conflict of interest policy. If we are non-compliant with the OCR requirements, will we lose our charter? Whether or not our charter is renewed is based on a number of factors. The various OCR complaints and our compliance with the OCR requirements will likely be considered by the district. We are working hard to ensure compliance with these requirements, and we have already begun discussions with the district on our charter renewal. We do not anticipate any problems with our renewal. How does the board intend to repair the damaged reputation of Stargate due to the OCR complaints? The board recognizes the importance of our reputation, and while the OCR complaints are not ideal and highlight certain deficiencies in our processes and operations, we still believe that Stargate's overall reputation is positive. We are working hard each and every day to address the issues raised by the OCR complaints, to review and update policies, procedures, and training opportunities to ensure that they are appropriately addressed and to limit future claims. We are also reviewing our communications to provide for more complete and transparent communications with the entire Stargate community, as hopefully evidenced by this town hall. Is the board aware that the requirement from one of the OCR complaints was that Stargate had to survey the staff about retaliation with OCR-approved questions, and the survey questions contained in the staff survey in January were not approved by OCR? Our staff survey is administered around the same time each year, and we specifically included questions regarding retaliation. These questions were submitted to the OCR before the survey was issued, and we incorporated feedback we received from the OCR. However, this feedback was not formal feedback. This was informal feedback. So we are actually still waiting from the OCR their formal feedback on the questions, and we anticipate a more specific survey related to the OCR, related to the issues raised by the OCR, will be conducted later this year. We understand that one of the OCR investigations involved a student that was charged with a sexual crime. Why was the community not informed of this situation? Why would the board and executive director cover such a thing up, given the serious safety issues presented here? Neither the executive director nor the board was trying to cover anything up. We fully cooperated with local law enforcement. We complied with the temporary protection order issued by Adams County courts and implemented a safety plan with need-to-know staff. Safety is a top priority for us, and we work hard to ensure that all children at Stargate are safe. The student was removed from the school once the student was charged pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 22-33-1055A. We've heard that certain records related to admissions were missing from the school's admissions files and a failure by the school to strictly adhere to admissions requirements. Why should the community not perceive these missing records as an effort to cover up loose practices and favoritism with respect to admissions? The missing records, these were referred to in one of the OCR reports. And those missing records relate to applicants failing to provide all required documentation for enrollment consideration. When the OCR conducted its investigation regarding our admissions, it communicated to Stargate that it was difficult to analyze the entire pool of applicants because some applicants did not submit all of the required documentation. Our admissions lottery is attended by and audited each year by a retained attorney, and we have and will continue to comply with all admissions policies and requirements. Has Eagles Landing been investigated in connection with the OCR complaints, and have they been cited by OCR for any violations? No, they have not been cited by OCR for any violations. An issue about document retention was reviewed by OCR, and Eagles Landing has changed its procedures to assure better record keeping. A dispute also arose outside the OCR process concerning mandatory reporting and keeping adequate records of reports, for which a violation was identified by the Department of Human Services. Eagles Landing has also taken steps to improve this aspect of record keeping. We've heard that in connection with one or more OCR complaints and investigations, the executive director has made some comments and has taken some steps that were inappropriate and insensitive. As a parent at Stargate, how can I regain confidence in our executive director and board based on this behavior? There have been some statements and actions made by the executive director that the board agrees were inappropriate and insensitive. The board has addressed these matters directly with the executive director, and we are working hard to ensure that all investigations are handled appropriately and with the respect they deserve.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
I know we're having questions now. So I would like to first start off by, for those of you that don't know, I'm Josh Cochran, I'm the Executive Director. I would like to start off by saying to many of you here who have been directly involved in this process that I deeply apologize for our deficits and lack of consistent operations and my own ignorance in a lot of our processes. One of the things that this has really highlighted for me personally is the areas that I was naive to as a leader, and a lot of the growth we have as a school for the student population, the teacher population, but then the deficits in our special ed that I just failed to really foresee coming. And so for many of you who were involved in these processes, many of you who filed in this complaints, I truly apologize, because what I want to focus on is our kids and putting the focus back to the students. And if I ever put a student at risk, then that is something that I have to work through, because that is not who I am, that's not what I'm about. So I did want to jump in here and apologize for those things. As there were some comments that were posted from some of the investigations and some of the interviews that I'm not proud of, and I was naive to some of those processes, and I do apologize.
The next question is, we have witnessed situations in which the executive director has not been completely truthful. Why does the board allow for falsehoods to be spread? The board desires for communications to be accurate and truthful. As volunteers who are not at the school full-time, we are not aware of all statements being made by the executive director or any other Stargate employee. If the board does become aware of an inaccurate statement, it attempts to address the situation appropriately. What kind of sexual harassment training did the administration have before the OCR incidents occurred? Prior to the OCR complaints, the administration had not received formal sexual harassment training, but we are working with Employers Council, an HR consulting group retained by the school, to make sexual harassment training an annual training requirement. The OCR is also reviewing a proposed sexual harassment training for all of our staff members. How does the board justify the role of the executive director and the top-heavy administration, including the amounts spent on these positions? This was discussed in greater detail at the previous town hall if you attended, but as a charter school, Stargate is responsible for its own budget and organizational structure. We have moved from a single building K-8 school to a K-12 school on an expansive campus. Our student population has doubled, resulting in additional administrators being necessary, such as an office manager, HR manager, and support staff. The board and administration work each year to determine the needs of the school going forward. The district has actually recommended that we hire more administrators, but we are currently having discussions for future years, and we may consider some organizational changes. The School Accountability Committee, otherwise known as SAC, originally had an oversight role to ensure the board operates within the bylaws and governmental laws. The board voted to remove this oversight role. With no oversight role within the school community, please explain who oversees the board. So the SAC's original authority is the same today as it was when it was first created. It's to monitor the effective governing of the school by assessing the school's progress towards its mission. This was in the original bylaws and in our current. Many interpreted this authority as giving the SAC a watchdog function over the board, but this has never been in the bylaws. By law, a SAC is an advisory board, and charter school experts have advised the board that this watchdog role was unique to Stargate and not best practice. In 2015, it was the community, not the board, the community that voted, based on the board's recommendations, to revise the bylaws to clarify the role of the SAC. Final decision-making authority must reside with the board. And it is the Stargate community, all of you, that actually oversees us. And you have the power to remove a board member through the recall and election process. Unlike all nearby charter school bylaws, Stargate's bylaws state that the treasurer-officer role is optional. Will this board work to remove the optional designation on this very important officer role to ensure that the board takes seriously its fiduciary duty regarding the school's finances? So Stargate is not the only local charter school to have the treasurer role as optional. For example, Pinnacle Charter School has it also optional. However, we are not aware of the reasoning behind the optional designation that was included in Stargate's original bylaws, and the current board does not treat and certainly does not view the treasurer position as optional. We're actually not even aware of any time in our history when we didn't have a treasurer, but this certainly may warrant further consideration of the board because we certainly don't think it is an optional position. In our most recent financial audit, there was a recommendation for better internal controls to avoid any misappropriation of funds. What is Stargate doing to address this recommendation? This recommendation is fairly standard for an organization of our size and with our limited management resources. However, it is an area in which we continuously strive to improve. The board is currently working with the CFO to identify areas of improvement and will attempt to implement procedural controls in consultation with our financial advisors to better our controls. What approvals are required when signing a settlement? What dollar amount requires board approval? What level of non-financial commitments, such as non-disclosure or fulfilling particular actions, requires board approval? If a settlement commits the school to spending money in future budget cycles, how is that approval handled? Excuse me. So any formal settlement agreement requires the approval of the board or the board's delegated members and must be signed by the board president after consultation with Stargate's legal counsel and our insurance company if it is an insured claim. All settlements that include monetary payments are reviewed with the school's CFO to understand current and future financial implications. When an employee leaves the school, is there an exit interview conducted, and if so, who receives the feedback provided by the departing employee? Stargate's standard practice is to have the HR manager conduct an exit interview on or around the employee's last day. It is obviously something that is voluntary. We cannot force an employee to submit to an exit interview. And once that exit interview is completed, the results are to be shared with the executive director and the entire board. We understand that certain prior employees have entered into agreements with Stargate that contain gag orders. Will the board waive these gag orders so that these employees can participate in investigations? It is standard in all settlement agreements for confidentiality provisions to be included. However, these provisions prevent disclosures to third parties and would not apply to disclosures required by law or to investigations conducted by or on behalf of the school. And if there's any individual who needs clarification on that, the board is always happy to provide that. Does the school have a gift policy as it pertains to staff and students, as well as potential students in the admissions process? And no, we don't. And I'm not sure who wrote that question, and if it's something that they've got more information or want to talk about, please contact us, because to the extent that there's a policy that we don't have that might be useful, we'd be happy to consider it. Why have questions from the audience been denied or declined in some board meetings? The community has a right to ask questions either in open mic or in response to topics on the agenda. Charter school and board best practices suggest that board meetings be kept to business only and public input be limited to public comment. We only have one board meeting per month, and the purpose of the meeting is for us to conduct business. If we responded to and had conversations with the community throughout these meetings, we would not be able to accomplish our required work. That being said, we never want a question or concern to go unaddressed. And therefore, we have an email address through which questions can be sent to the entire board, and we also have a mechanism for private discussions to be held during executive sessions. There are a number of folks who we know have filed OCR complaints that we have invited to attend executive sessions to meet with us. Hopefully they will. Some have declined, but we always want to make sure that the community feels that they can bring a complaint to us, whether through the email process, the communications pathways, or through an executive session. 4 of the current board members were on the board that voted to renew the executive director's contract for the 2017-2018 school year. Why won't those board members resign? And I am one of those board members. As a board, we work hard to make decisions. We work hard to make decisions that are in the best interests of the entire Stargate community, based upon all of the information known to the board at the time, some of which is available only to the board due to privacy and confidentiality requirements. The 4 board members in question, myself, Jan, Christina, and Callie Herzog, who actually could not be here this evening, we stand behind the decision to renew the executive director for this current school year. None of us have indicated a willingness to resign, and we are all committed to continuing to look after Stargate's students and staff. And again, we answer to you, the community. So certainly, if you don't feel that we are doing a good job, the recall process is always available. In the past 4 months, the board has spent 1,200 minutes in non-transparent executive sessions for the specified reason of, quote, personnel issues. This is compared to 430 minutes per agendas in open meetings. How can the community be ensured that the board is using these lengthy, closed-door sessions for legitimate reasons? These private meetings appear quite excessive. First disclaimer, I did not go back and confirm the numbers that are presented here. I'm assuming that they are correct, but I did not confirm them. It is certainly not our plan. We do not enjoy or like having so many executive sessions. We would much rather not. But there's been a lot to discuss, a lot about personnel issues that under statutory requirements are required to be handled in an executive session. We always want to make sure that we are making informed decisions, and unfortunately, we do not have the opportunity to work together as a board to address these issues in an alternative forum. So, to make sure that we get decisions right, we're going to meet as much as we need to, and it's to the dismay of a lot of our families, but that's what we've committed to each as board members. We have already heard of teachers and other key employees who have left or will be leaving. What is the board and administration doing to retain valued employees? Employees, whether it's at Stargate or anywhere else, they leave for different reasons. It could be that they are unhappy. It could be that they are relocating to be close to family, or financial hardships, or just a better opportunity. We want to attract and retain top talent, and we are continually working with the administration to figure out ways to make our environment appealing and to maintain competitive salaries. We will be rolling out staff-wide training covering certain topics. We will be evaluating instructional programs and analyzing our financial resources and staffing needs as we attempt to pay our teachers more. And as a side note, that's where I think we've got, honestly, the biggest challenges in terms of our future. Our teachers are way underpaid. Has the board ever faced a situation where it must choose between transparency, student safety, individual student privacy, and the reputation of the board? And whoever wrote this question, I actually love the question because that's what being a board member is. Every day, that's what we go through. We are always faced with tough decisions, and the volunteers making up the board are committed to making decisions that are in the best interest of our entire community, including our students and staff. We try to be as transparent as we can, but sometimes we just are legally prohibited from disclosing information. We recognize there's always room for improvement, and we will continue to work hard to grow the community's trust. And that's a promise that I make to you, and I know that all the other boards make to you. We have no interest in hiding things or not keeping you informed. Again, you oversee us, so we want to make sure that you feel like you're getting all the information that you need. And I appreciate the fact that we heard, I think loud and clear, that folks felt they worried. And so that's why we've done the 2 town hall meetings. And if we need to do future town hall meetings or other events to make sure that the community is kept informed, especially because not everyone can attend board meetings, we certainly will entertain those opportunities. Why is Stargate still a good choice for my child? Well, Stargate is the only charter school designed to specifically serve intellectually gifted children. Our community of learners is always our first priority, and our goal each day is to ensure that they are working toward an adulthood that engages their passion, their intelligence, and their gifts to create a happy and fulfilling life beyond their school years. Our school's unique environment and approach to education allows children to fully embrace who they are without judgment. As is evidenced by this past year, the Stargate community is always open to improvement, and our staff, board, and administration work hard to implement these improvements as fully and as quickly as possible while still providing the best education possible for our students. Again, we're not perfect, but I still think this is an amazing, amazing place for my kids and for all of yours. Those are all the questions that we put into the presentation. We ask that and encourage you to reach out to the board for other questions. I will stay for a while. I'm not going to commit the board members in terms of staying, but if other board members want to stay for a little bit, we can certainly field some questions that were not addressed in the presentation. So, anyone?
Yeah, I have a question. I have not met Christina McMillan. Thank you for your volunteering. I understand that you're an independent director, but I'm very concerned because at this point, I know that the board changed the rules to allow for our independent director's child to apply to school and be considered in a priority, which makes her not independent any longer, so therefore she needs to step down as a board member, even though she's an independent. She's she's not independent anymore because she has asked, well, I don't know if she asked, but a favor essentially has been granted. Rules have been changed for her child. And I find that disconcerting. I would also like to know where Ms. McMillan came from in the community. Is she an educator? Is she one of your friends? Is she one of Jan's friends? Where did she come from? Who picked her?
I'll start with the second question first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I actually am a local dentist, and I looked into Stargate when my daughter was 2, because it's an amazing school. And I really thought that it was a wonderful place for her to have an opportunity to go to school. And I then met Josh at one of the tours that were given to the community. And I really decided it was a great place to pursue. So I then reached out to Brad through his email with the school and said, hey, how do I potentially become involved with the Board of Education? Because it's something that you may be interested in having independent members for. And so I met with Brad, he and I discussed it. I then met with Jan, and she and I discussed it. And I came to one of the board meetings and attended one of the board meetings, and it was something I was interested in doing, and I then was appointed onto the board.
One thing that's really important with respect to when Christina was put on the board, when she was considering to be on the board, and even when she was put on the board, she was told in no uncertain terms that this did not give her any type of advantage for her child to be considered for Stargate, because at the time, the admissions policy did not provide for any priority. For example, there's priority for siblings, there's also priority for staff members, and at the time, an independent board member did not get the same priority treatment that an employee would get. And so it was made clear to Christina that she did not get any priority. One of the things that we have been looking at over the years is, why can't we attract independent board members? As you saw in the slides, we can have up to 4 independent board members, and since I've been on the board, the most we've had is 1. Before me, I think has there ever been 2? Just 1. And independent board members do provide, we believe, a lot of benefit because they're not bringing what their kids are telling them in school each day into these meetings. And you know, we wear 2 hats. We wear our board member hat and we wear our parent hat, and it's sometimes hard, right, to separate those, but we do our best. But we think that there is a significant benefit to having independent board members. And so one of the things that we talked about was, how do we attract independent board members, and if we actually gave them priority similar to a teacher, would that result in more independent board members to serve? And we said yes, but we don't want people to just apply for the board to be appointed as an independent board member so that they can increase their chances of having their child here. So what we did was we said that unlike with a teacher, you have to serve on the board for at least 2 years in order to get that priority. You also have to be, quote unquote, a board member in good standing, and we define that. So if you are not coming to meetings, if you are not participating, if you are not fulfilling the obligations of a board member, then you do not get that preference. Now, will there be someone who maybe says, I'm willing to make that 2-year commitment just so I have a better chance of getting my child into school? Maybe, and maybe it's worth it to have that independent board member be a part of it. Christina's daughter did get into Stargate for next year, and as a result, she will be rolling off of the board because she cannot serve in her independent board member status.
Then doesn't she need to resign now? Because since she now have a child, she is not
No, her
elected.
child is not enrolled
But
into
she
the school.
wasn't elected
until-
any longer. I mean, at this point, she
Sorry?
was not elected. So what do you mean rolling off? Her time on the board ends when?
So I have a 3-year term just like any other board member, and I started my term, which was back in 2016, in the summer. And so my term ends just as any other board member who has a 3-year term, which would be July of this coming year. June 30th, excuse me, of this coming
June
year.
30th of 2018.
Correct.
2018. If she had another year, for example, on her term, she would be rolling off the board, or actually would have to leave her board position earlier. And if for some reason her child, this isn't with her, but if any board member had their child actually enrolled in the school, they also would need to resign as a board member. Christina's child won't be enrolled in the school until August.
Okay.
Can I just add one more thing? I just wanted to also answer the first part of your question. I didn't have any prior relationship with anybody on the board. I know you mentioned that. I didn't know any of these other board members. I literally came to school just with interest of the school. And also, as far as the policy, I didn't actually vote on the policy to enact a preference at all for myself or my child. That was a policy that I recused myself from, so I did not vote to enact that.
But did you discuss it?
No.
I was
No,
not
she was
present
actually,
for that part of the meeting.
we asked her to leave, and she did not participate in any of the discussions.
All right, thank you.
And I also wanted to mention I actually had another independent potential board member interested because of this policy. So I think that there is something to be said for the fact that it may be able to attract some people to the school that might otherwise not have been board members, independent members that could actually be a benefit to the school.
Well, why aren't we reaching out to retired teachers unions and retired teachers and retired executive directors of schools? I mean, you guys should be connected enough to be able to reach out to these people, okay?
You are absolutely correct.
You know, that
And we are. So when I joined the board, we had one independent member, it was Matt Goodman. He served on the city council for the city of Thornton, and the previous board president had recruited him. He left the day he swore me in his office. And we have not been able to get anyone else to participate. We do reach out. We do talk to lots of people. We do ask people to apply. We actually had 3 people come to a meeting shortly after Christina did, and every one of them said, no, thank you. They didn't want to do it. The time commitment, when you don't have an interest in the school itself or just an interest in the community, is a barrier to a lot of people. But if you've got people that are interested, please ask them to apply.
Yeah, for example, we had someone who was, I don't remember if she led the department or was involved in the department for gifted education at Regis University that we actually had recruited, and we had gotten her to actually say, yes, I wanted to do it. And then she attended one of our board meetings, and after one of our board meetings, and we talked to her about the time commitment and how many meetings that we were having, she said that she couldn't make that commitment.
So there was a person up here first and then down here.
Why don't you offer to compensate that person for their time if you think it's valuable?
Well, as a board member, none of us are compensated.
No, but you're a parent that's volunteered because you have a child here and you want the school to succeed.
Right.
But if you think that somebody from the community is an asset,
Right.
offer compensation.
You know, it's something that we would probably need to discuss with our CFO. It is also would probably, actually I know it would require a change in our bylaws, because our bylaws actually say that they are unpaid positions. And if anyone was involved when we had the bylaws amended back in 2015, it's a very difficult process to do, but I don't think it's something that we shouldn't consider if we think that it's valuable. So I think that's a good suggestion.
I would add, just to that, I'm sorry to speak out of turn here, but like the school board in general, like Adams 12, Littleton Public Schools, whatever, those positions are not paid either. These people volunteer their time, and if you just look at the hours there, what was the thing? 1,200 hours in executive session and 400 hours in...
I think it was minutes.
Minutes.
It was minutes. If it was hours, I'm not sure.
1,600 minutes for this year dedicated outside your job, so...
I'm going to go back there. She had a question early on that go ahead, Helen.
Okay. I think we have spent hours of conversation on whether we should have independent board members' kids coming with priority or not. We have spent hours of conversation with lots of audience in multiple board meetings. And
Correct.
I know our board members are volunteers. And today we are supposed to talk about our legal issues. I think that's more important. And this makes me think again, do we spend our time wisely on the things we really should think?
Well, the only thing I'll say to that is what's necessarily important to you might not necessarily be as important to someone else, and they may have something. So the purpose of this conversation that we're having tonight is a board communication. Certainly the OCR complaints and those issues we know is something that we wanted to highlight and the community had, but if anyone has questions that they want answered, and this is as good a venue as any to get them answered. So, I want to respect everyone. Sorry, Angela and then Kevin.
Regarding the independent board member, I'd like to say that at PRA, they also have a benefit for their board members that they get to have parity for their children coming in as well as any other employees. So I wanted to say that out there just so that.
Yeah, PRA is not the only. I mean, we did look at other schools.
We would not be the only one offering that benefit to our board members. I do think that at the beginning of your presentation, you had mentioned that our bylaws state we can have up to 4 independent board members.
Correct.
I think that given the amount of OCR things that have been going on, the fact that the school has increased in size, location, there's a huge more responsibility on the board, I think that it would behoove us to work extremely hard to get all 4 independent positions filled. And I think that if we did a little bit better job, we could get those done pretty easily. I know it's difficult. I know you're
Yeah, you are.
I don't think it's that hard.
Well,
We can do it. And I think
so
it's
we
really
have a
important.
recruiting committee that one of their jobs is to recruit. I don't want to volunteer you, but it really would be something that we are, as a board, we are all in favor of getting more independent board members who can provide value, right? They've got a background that we think would be helpful, and they are intelligent and motivated and willing to work hard. We also, through the process, want to weed out, if we can, anyone who we think really has no interest in providing productive assistance and is just doing it to try
I want
and
to be
get
clear. We've had one applicant. So the process, and so in case you guys want to recruit for us,
The process is just like for a regular board member. They fill out the application online, it gets submitted to the recruiting committee sends it to the liaison for the recruiting committee, who sends it to the board. The board then schedules an opportunity for this person to come to a meeting, they come and observe the meeting and see how it works, and then they talk to a board member on whether they want to pursue the application. We do background checks, we do interviews in public. Christina went through all of this in a public meeting. And then the board decides whether or not to appoint. So it's not just that we're going to take everybody that puts an application in. 1, we have to have applicants. And 2, they have to be good applicants. And 3, we're going to make sure that the public is aware of what's happening, because we're not going to just randomly appoint people to the board. We're going to do it at a public meeting.
all right, I'm not.
So if you've got-
I'm not to do anything other than that.
No, but if you've got people, I just want you to understand the process so you can communicate that out.
I just think we could use on our community, if we put an email out to your community saying, we are meeting independent board members, who do you work with, who's your boss, who's your neighbor? Would probably help our
I
process.
think that's a good idea, Angela. Kevin?
So on complaint 6, you had mentioned that they wanted a referral letter after May 31st.
No, I think that's we have to show that any referral letters that we have provided. The referral letter has already been.
I'll get you to it, just. I believe that's
And it was
correct.
to refer to a letter of recommendation written by the elementary principal.
Okay.
As part of that. So
So
that's
given
already
that it's
been
May
done.
31st, I can't read between the lines, it sort of sounds like we're still paying that person. And I think you had noted on there that health insurance was being paid.
Right, all the payments have been made.
So the last town hall meeting, you talked about the OCR cases costing a total of $10,000. Are those numbers included in that $10,000?
Yes, that's there. Those are all from the fire insurance.
So unemployment insurance, health benefits, payroll, we're all,
We've been responsible for so far.
Everything that we have paid,
Are you limiting that in scope to OCR related complaints only? Because we know you paid a teacher from 2 years ago, you paid her unemployment, her settlement amount, her name is on the school's finances.
Right.
So I think when you
And
say that
and there are claims that are insured versus non-insured, and the amounts that we reported at the town hall are correct amounts as to what we paid.
For the OCR.
For OCR specifically, that was a specific question. That was a
For
specific
the
question.
insurance, you're just saying that's how much, that's not how much the settlements were. That's how
No.
much the
No,
insurance.
That's how
that's
much
correct.
we have paid out.
Correct, it was just a question of how much have we paid out of pocket.
So if a board member needs to recuse themselves for any reason from a discussion, is that submitted in writing?
So the way
Is that what the bylaw says?
And the way we've handled the in writing clause in our bylaws is that it's noted in the minutes. That
So they
we're,
don't write. So
we
it's
write
not-
it in the minutes, right? And for
Okay.
legal recommendation, that's how we've done it.
So that seems a little loosey-goosey to me if you've got maybe a sensitive issue involving a family member of a board member, that if their actual recusal is happening, I think that's a concern that needs to be noted, and should probably be handled a little more above board in the future, so that can be documented, so that everybody knows who is actually recusing themselves and that they're actually not involved in those discussions. Regarding complaint number 1, can you put in layman's terms unilateral decisions, manifestation, determination, and so on about that? Because I'm not sure everybody understands this.
Let me go to the slide so I can show everyone what you're referring to.
So a manifestation determination is something that happens when a potential student on a 504 IEP that has a disability might be referred for expulsion. And what you're looking at is their disability, or what they did is a manifestation of their disability. And so if a student is suspended for 10 days, then you would go to the manifestation to determine whether or not the behavior, the act, was a manifestation of their disability. And the unilateral decision-making is not bringing in the IEP or 504 team to make a determination on a change in placement, which might mean a change in the classroom, or a change in grade level, or a change in location of school as defined by IDEA.
So that was in the case that was filed on, January 12th of last year, and now we have one filed on February 28th of this year for the same thing, failure to do a manifestation determination, and failure to implement a 504. So why is that happening a year out after we've already done monitoring for that?
Well, this last one, we don't know right now. We don't know what the specifics in terms of what's being alleged that was done improper. So once we get that information, we'll be able to
I thought it was under 504, but those aren't necessarily part of
The
504.
complaint just states those things that we listed up there, and it also causes us to just start to respond with a data request and to the other ones. Anyone at any time can file a complaint to the OCR, and if it meets certain criteria, then the OCR will begin to investigate. And our job is to respond accordingly.
Right, I know that, but I'm just saying, I just had the concern that we're having similar, that we're a year out from this, and it seems we're in that, could potentially be the case.
And we're looking forward to responding about how our new systems, including the monitoring boards for the students that have been referred through our process, that have been submitted to OCR already. So we're looking forward to the opportunity to show our systems off and welcome that opportunity, frankly.
actually, Kowalski.
Would you put up case number 2 there for a second? I just want to reread that again. It sort of implied that OCR said that 63 or 64%. Yeah, it says OCR conducted an analysis of admissions data. I'm looking at
Provided by the school.
What's that?
Provided by the school.
Okay.
The data that we provided them to support, or actually for them to be able to conduct analysis, and then actually before the investigation was completed, we actually just voluntarily agreed to change our policies and things like that, so they actually said that it was closed.
I just want to point out, because the way that's worded, it implies that OCR is saying 64% of applicants. That's actually what the school said in its summary. And I think here the OCR noted that the school only served 2.4% of the total population with disabilities, as compared to 8% within the district. Okay, so I just want to make sure that it's clear to the community there's a discrepancy there, right? The school's saying we serve disabled students, but some of the other data suggest otherwise.
Well, that data, I believe, talks about the percentage of disabled students here. We're saying that simply with this information is just saying, looking at the applicants and who was qualified, what was the difference between those that did not fall under an IEP or 504 as opposed to ones that did or potentially could have, and this was the data.
But OCR could not do its own independent investigation because the work records available.
Right, and actually the reference earlier about some of the missing application records they were referring to was they didn't have complete records to be able to complete the full investigation.
Yeah, but was that on the part of the people who applied, or was it because the school couldn't supply to OCR all the documents that they requested?
Do you want to answer that?
We have all admissions records going back at least the last 7 years when we started using an online application through Google, and then lately through SchoolMint the last 2 years. The records that they couldn't find is when somebody just submitted an IQ test without the required referrals from a teacher or a parent, or the location where they live, the proof of residency documentation. So OCR did not have complete records for certain kids. About 25 to 30% of our applicants don't fill out the entire application and leave it in process, and then they do not qualify because they have a complete application. So we send out lots of records, we send out emails saying, please submit, please complete your application, and we wait for those responses to come back.
I had a question in talking about what a charter school is and so forth. You pointed out that Adams 12 provides us with some HR support, and I'm wondering if you can tell me what HR support Adams 12 district provides us with, because I have felt ever since we started here, which are 6 years ago, our son's been here since kindergarten, that it certainly seems as though hiring processes aren't very transparent. I don't want people's backgrounds, I don't need that, but I need to know where these people are coming from teachers to our front of the office staff, everybody. Is it, Brad's former secretary wants a job at the school, and so she comes and applies, or is this truly, honestly, an open pool of candidates?
Just, would be my secretary. I pay more than the school does, so.
Just, example.
Operational.
Yeah, no, we use online application systems to screen qualified candidates. Anybody and everybody, we post jobs all over the place. We use Paylocity now that posts, I think it was like 800 different job sites. So we recruit people from all over, teams of teachers, teams of staff, interview for various positions, background checks, all those things. They can't start until the background check's completed. And so we try to really follow the systems and processes with fidelity.
So Adams 12 doesn't provide us any HR
Not as far as hiring
Not
goes.
for hiring
Adams 12
personnel.
provides us with support for maybe consultation with HR matters or practices, or if there's we use them for recommendations for mediation between staff prior. And they used to provide payroll, and that's since been designated back to the school a couple of years ago. But if we call them to ask a question, they're ready to respond, but not day-to-day HR practices.
And on that same vein, we contracted HR services because we just promoted somebody inside. Is that person not an HR director?
So the current the person that was in the HR director position is no longer actually here.
She left a couple weeks ago.
Employers Council is used to be referred to, most people probably know it as Mountain States. It is a very highly respected HR consulting company that lots of companies use as a resource, especially here in the Colorado area. They provide everything such as HR guidance. They will do investigations that are needed. And one of the things that we realized, even regardless of whether or not we have an HR manager here, because we are currently looking to replace that, but the plan, I believe, is to still stay with Employers Council, is because the size of this school now, with the number of employees that we have, certified staff, classified staff, there's a lot of HR support that we need, and just having one person dedicated here at the school isn't enough. And so that's part of the reason that we have engaged engaged employers council.
The lady in the striped shirt has had
Sorry, to follow up to that.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Is the investigation that Shelley Landgraf doing fall under employers council? Or
No, that is totally separate.
You mentioned you're concerned about the underpaying of teachers here at the school. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Is there a pathway, knowing that our school is underfunded 20% to public school, is there a way that the way the school is structured, is there a pathway that can be rectified so that high quality teachers can be attracted and maintained? Really, that's where the education happens for a child, isn't the classroom? And that was a big concern of mine, is that.
As it is, I think, of lots of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is the biggest project that our CFO and Al is working on right now with the compensation committee of teachers and staff. Starting in 2019, we will receive a larger proportion of no levy funding per some legislation that has changed about a year and a half ago. And so we will receive enough funding to bring our teachers up to 100% of Adams 12 level. And they are creating a defined, systematic pay scale that teachers can look at to know what they're going to make from year 1 to 2, year 5 to 6, and then also having additional increases for salary, whether it be for school or for performance. And they're valuing all those things now that will be instituted in 2019, 2020. Very exciting for the teachers, and they're the ones defining that work right now.
So, if I have my dates right, so based on filing dates back before June 21st of last year, when the board reviewed the executive director's contract, you would have been aware of the disability OCR case, the retaliation case, and I know that volleyball information, although the case wasn't filed, that was in the hands of the board. Did the board consider administrative leave at all while they waited to see what was going to shake out from these very serious allegations? Because the retaliation case weighs on me heavily, because when somebody's allowed to stay in a position when they've been found to have been abusive to a former employee, how do you think the other employees feel safe to speak freely and be their true selves in the workplace?
I can tell you that we looked at and considered all the information that we had at the time. We considered lots of different alternatives, and we made a decision to renew the contract.
Would it have been possible after the renewal date to then consider administrative leave?
It is possible to do that at any point in time.
And did the board consider that?
Again, we consider,
Did you consider it? Do you remember having a board discussion at that time?
at that time, no, we did not specifically discuss administrative leave.
Two things. One related to the teachers. I know at one time that any job openings at Stargate were not allowed to be posted on the Adams 12 website. Is that something that's now available? Before we talked about there was Craigslist, which would concern me, but like Adams 12, can we get jobs posted Stargate?
It's definitely something we can open up and explore. Adams has been phenomenal this last year and a half with some new leadership changes into the charter liaison role, and they've been more welcoming for us to be included in a lot of their practices. So that's something we can reinitiate that conversation again. But we have not been able to post an actual website for our positions up prior.
And is that for a charter school?
I don't know if there's a hard fast answer, just we've never been allowed nor the other charter schools to want to post on their job.
Just so there isn't a great other pool.
And I think a lot of it now has to do with just the fact that the hiring and onboarding systems are so different. Not that that's something that should prohibit us, but it's never been allowed by her in my 15 years here. So it's a bummer. But we do post to the Colorado Charter Schools, we post to the Colorado Association website all over the place.
No Craigslist though?
No Craigslist, no. We've stopped Craigslist postings because we've gotten better with a lot of our practices.
Kevin, sorry.
Oh, I should.
Second. Yeah, no, go ahead. And then Kevin, if you don't mind, Amanda's got a question.
In regards to the financial town hall,
Yes.
when I did read the question, and it caught my eye when I printed it out, what is the cost of all ORC settlements and legal fees? And I get that it's answered, yep, basically today, Stargate is paying $10,000. But to me, reading that as a parent community, that means including insurance cases, but what do we do for deductibles and all of those clothes? Like, I feel like it's answered, but it seems evasive, whether it's intentional or not.
Those are deductibles, and what we talked about at both town halls, which you obviously weren't able to attend, if you didn't get that little bit of color, was that, yes, our insurance rates are likely to go up. Right now, we don't know what those look like. So we weren't able to say, as a result of this, that our insurance rates are going up by 20% or whatever the because we don't have those hard and fast numbers yet. But, I mean, we're trying to be financially transparent, we're trying to be transparent in general, and so we do intend to make that known to the public once we have more information, but we just don't. That is the number right now, it's just.
I just feel like as reading that, like we know from other board meetings that teachers have paid out or something's been settled, so it's way more than 10,000. Maybe that's direct, but I feel like that's kind of an incomplete answer. It's an answer, but it's really not, it seems evasive. Just my perspective.
Sure, no, I appreciate it.
Do we know what
Hold on.
insurance paid out?
What's that,
Do
sorry?
we know what insurance paid out?
Yes, we know what the insurance paid out.
Are you willing to disclose that?
First of all, I don't know offhand what the amount is, but there's also confidentiality provisions in our agreements that don't necessarily allow us to provide the data about how much we paid out.
So if I guess it was around 200,000?
You can guess, I have no idea. I mean, sitting here today, I can probably say I've got a rough idea, but I don't know the specifics.
You guys responded to it, Cora, and I tallied it up.
Okay.
Taking in the 55,000 that I see on the books, I'd say it's around 180,000.
And some of those were posted on your website, so it's not confidential. Yeah, they were posted, more than one, it was posted name and amount. So that's already, the public has already had.
Okay, well, I can't sit here right now and say that I know the exact number. I'm not saying that what you're saying is inaccurate. I don't know.
I'll post something that, I'll take what you gave me in the Cora, and I'll take what I have in financial records, and I'll put something out there so people can see.
You certainly have the right to do so. Let me just get, I saw Amanda had a question.
So is there a policy already in place in terms of the hiring practices? So I understand you can post it anywhere you want, right? But if it's a friend of yours or a friend of Josh's or a friend of Missy's, there's going to be some favoritism. So is there any sort of hiring group that interviews are held by a number of people and that a vote or a decision is made? Or is it a unilateral decision?
Do I answer?
So every position is interviewed by a team of teachers or staff members that position would directly impact. For example, we just interviewed for a new Eagles Landing director, and so they had a variety of people. I think there were 7 to 8 for each interview, and then they, because that person reports to the CFO, they put their top 2 candidates forward to the CFO. We're actively recruiting and hiring for assistant principals. So team leads in this building sat down and interviewed 4 assistant principals, and then the team leads pushed their top 2 candidates up to Missy and myself to interview. Teachers interview as a team, push their top 2 candidates forward to their building principals. So Mr. Cable will be hiring English teachers, social studies teachers, math teachers, and those departments hire or interview themselves without him there and push their top candidates forward. So that kind of is our process for those. Classified positions are a little different if it's a custodial position. I don't unilaterally hire anybody myself, neither does Missy or Rob. It's all done by a team, and then we have nepotism policies and things like that in our handbooks.
Sorry, Kevin. Did you have another question?
I did, but I didn't give it back yet. Can you pull up the communication pathways?
Sure. For which one?
The high school.
Yeah.
I think there's one that was high school and sports division.
This is the secondary one. There's another one for sports.
Super.
Sure.
I guess, where does the Title IX coordinator come into play in this process?
So we have to update these with the new Title IX coordinating process. That wasn't a part of the resolution, but all that is going to be updated with our staff handbooks that we're going to send off to them, as well as the district, as we provide all these things. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I apologize.
All of the Title IX coordinator and Title II 504 information is currently being updated. This one will have it in there, as will all the other pathways, whether it's a community one or staff one, will be updated over the summer as we do all that work to submit before next year.
Like, what will that look like? Will there be like
It'll probably,
or?
no, it'll probably be at the bottom down here, and it'll basically just say, if you have a complaint or if you have a concern of sex discrimination at any time, here's the contact information, name, email address, mailing address, and phone number.
Okay, so it lives as kind of an override.
Absolutely, yeah. As does the EEOC information that we put into our handbooks as well, in our complaint policies, and you can anytime contact these departments to file a complaint anytime.
calls and board meetings recently about where OCR has been discussed. And we talk about that board communicates high-level information. I have to say, it's been extremely misleading. Yes, the agreements are a resolution, but they got there via settlement. And then, I asked the question, is there a balloon payment coming up? And I was told no. And I pull up the audit on my phone. I'm like, looks like there's a balloon payment due in 2021. Well, yes, there's a balloon payment due. I asked the question. It's not a gotcha question. It's a question. The answer is misleading. I correct it, and in this case it was me. And then the truth is said. But not everybody's going to follow all that. Not everybody can attend these things. And I know the board, as you said in your answer, you're committed to the truth getting out there. But I don't think that I still think the community is not clearly understanding the seriousness of these issues. I think also I asked a question about why a teacher left, and I was told that she gave no reason. That's a lie. There's an exit letter at the school, in possession of the board has it, and so does Adams 12. A reason was given. And to stand at a public forum and say no reason was given for that person to leave, when I can give it right now to the public, a document that's public record as to why she left, but to have someone stand up and say to the community that no reason was given, that's a lie. And I'm very frustrated at that happening. And why are parents being asked, why are we disseminating truthful information when I feel the board is making misleading statements or lies of omission?
So I'm sorry you feel that way. Obviously, that is not our intent to the extent that there's any information that we provide. We're doing so with the hope that it is 100% accurate, and to the extent that there are inaccuracies, you should let us know and we should correct them. I don't know the specific discussion with respect to why a teacher left, because if you had asked that to the board, our response would be, I'm sorry, we can't tell you. We don't discuss personnel issues with the public. It's something that we can't do. So I wasn't a part of that conversation. I don't know if
But
any
you can all let the community know I know you can't. If you can't disseminate the reason, you can let people know that the information can be found. I mean, and there were no board members here that day when that was said.
Okay.
But this is a lot of information, and a lot of it is very sensitive. And I don't think we have to say people's names to be more clear about what things have transpired. That's what I would say. Just saying, well, it's confidential, we can't discuss it, does not give a clear picture to the community, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that opinion is probably shared because it's not a clear picture, and it's something that I know is frustrating. And I know that there are times where just the answer is, unfortunately, it's not information that we can disseminate. And it's a hard answer to hear because you want to know. And we're just trying to meet our fiduciary and legal responsibilities. And trust me, there are times that that all of us would love to tell people things because we think it will make folks understand more some of the decisions that we're making, but we also realize that we're bound by privacy concerns.
There was a lot of conversation around if you don't like what the board's doing, you can just recall them or just not vote for them, right? What is the recall rule? I don't even know what.
So I can pull them up. I don't know them offhand, but they're in the bylaws.
Okay.
And I don't know. Do you know the requirement? There's a certain percentage of folks that you need to get to actually participate in the recall vote to create almost like a quorum for that vote, and then you need a certain percentage to actually decide to do the recall. I don't remember what the exact percentages are, but if you look on the website under the governance documents of the bylaws, there's a whole section in there that clearly sets that out.
The reason I ask is that, is I heard somebody say 50% of the parent population But when I look at that, and then I think, okay, if it is 50%, I'll look it up. But,
Sure.
what percentage of the parent population votes in the elections?
Traditionally,
And
it's,
to be perfectly open, it is less people that vote than that would be required for a recall. When the bylaws were updated a couple of years ago, when the bylaws were updated a couple of years ago, we lowered that percentage to be more in line with what area charter schools were doing because it was extremely difficult, and we wanted to make sure we were aligned with what best practices were. Recall is an option. It is a very difficult option. And I think communication and working and being transparent, what we're trying to do, what you're trying to do, I think is the best way to resolve the issues.
It seems like it's virtually impossible based on the ratios that I would assume to actually recall.
It is difficult.
it's difficult. I would have said it was impossible to get the bylaws amended, and we were able to do it in 2015. So, yeah, certainly it's not easy, but it is something that's certainly.
But there is an election coming up in May, and the nomination process will open in April, and we'll have our candidates by middle of April, and then the election will be first week of May.
For a basis of comparison, what is the percentage that you need to change the bylaws? Is it 67%?
We couldn't hit that at all, guys.
She asked a question about what it takes to change the bylaws, and I don't know off the top of my head, actually. She is looking at
We
that.
changed the bylaw for the SAC committee, right?
Excuse me?
We changed the bylaw for the SAC committee a few years ago.
And that took 2 votes of the community. The first vote, it didn't pass because not enough people voted. The second vote, after a huge push over the summer to get people to vote during the admissions.
Yes, I know that. And look at the attendance today.
Yeah, and we only had 600 kids in the school
1.5%.
back then.
So, hold on, Jackie, your question.
As to Brad, I keep hearing the word confidential, and so can you clarify that these OCR complaints, the investigations and the resolutions, are they not public record? Are they not currently, in fact, posted on the OCR website, and can they not be queried by anybody?
They can certainly be queried. Are they posted on the OCR website? I don't know
Yes,
because
they are.
I've actually gone to look up on the OCR website and I couldn't find them. I found ones from 2014 before, so I don't know.
When you last looked, but they are there.
We looked actually a couple days ago.
Maybe they might have been hard for you to find.
So, yeah, actually, if you can send me how to find them, I'd love to. But, and they are publicly available in terms of there are some people who have posted them onto various sites, but just because they have made it public, we as a board do not feel it is our
Yeah,
place
if
to
you're
do
on the
so.
OCR website, you can tell people that. You can tell people to get that because that's where the public records are being held. I think that's information the community might want to have.
And I don't think that there's any reason why they can't, and I'm being 100% truthful with you that I have looked on the OCR website and couldn't find them. We actually, trying to think on Wednesday. So if you want to send me the link, it'd be great.
In the future, you'll know how to access it.
Okay.
It's not easy to find, but it is.
Because there's a website, if you go, and I can even pull it up here, there's a website that's the OCR, and there's a link that says you can search, and I remember it says 2013 to present, and I searched under Adams 12 as well as Stargate, just under the keywords, and it has Adams 12, and it has 5 of them, I believe, that are from 2014 or before. So
Stargate is clearly posted, but I'll
Okay,
send it to you.
that's fine.
And I'll send you the however many cards you have to
Okay.
And aren't those redacted on that website?
get. They are redacted.
They're redacted.
No, I assume they're.
So
I assume
that's
they're
the confidentiality part, by the way, also. So you can
Yeah,
read
no,
those
I appreciate
without
that. Thank you. Okay.
knowing those people's names.
I would just like to say, you can sort of hear a little bit of frustration going along. And we came here 6 years ago, right after the entire board quit, and you and Jan being the 2 longest now serving board members.
And Callie was at the same time as me.
Okay, and you guys carried us through the transition, which I'm sure was very rocky. Fortunately, we got here the fall after that all came about. But at this point, just from my own experience, because when John was in 1st grade, I took a concern to his teacher, she blew me off. I took a concern to Josh, he blew me off. I took a concern to the board, you guys blew me off. So it seems basically it was, you said, well, go back and talk to Josh about it. Well, Josh had already blown me off on this particular subject. And so I stopped, And I would say at this point, in the last 2 years, this school has exploded. Yes, we've built out. Yes, our enrollment has doubled. But maybe isn't it time for you and Jan to consider stepping aside? Because you guys and Callie, as the most long-term people, basically were very laissez-faire after you got through getting rid of Sharon. And now it seems like all of this stuff came down with our current administrator and these huge concerns from a lot of family members. And you guys got big, gigantic wake-up calls about a year and a half ago. And so, I mean, I think you guys should maybe consider the possibility that there are other people who would be interested in being on the board that aren't deserving of being on the board because they, volunteered for 20 years in the CRC, but are deserving of being on the board because they might get elected against people who are just career politicians as our board members. Just putting it out there.
So I do take a little bit of exception to saying that we've been laissez-faire for the last few years. One of the questions was how many hours we've been spending in meetings addressing these concerns. We have spent more hours at the school working on issues to be fixed in the 6 years that I've been on the board, not just in the last year and a half, to the point where my family now is asking me to step down. My term is up in June, and I'm more than happy to step aside. There's lots of opportunity for people to run. People don't have to vote for me if they don't want to. It has absolutely nothing to do with politicians or anything like that, and everything to do with what we believe is best for this school. And I am proud of the work that we've done. Have we made mistakes? Yes, we have. Are we fixing them? Yes, we are. And we are trying to get better at it.
And I want to reiterate that because it's actually a little hurtful to say that we are laissez-faire. Same thing with Jan. I get requests by my family all the time. We've had enough. I work 70 hours a week in my job and then spend my free time serving as a board member. And you know what? It's really hard. And why do I do it? I do it because I love the school and because I think that I actually can help and I can help make a difference. And that's what I've been doing for 6 years. And I am very proud of what I personally and every single board member that we've had here has done. And as Jan said, have we made mistakes? I have one more year left on my term, so next I'll be up for, my term will end at the end of next year. Will I be running again? I don't know. I don't know. I guess
Right, but it's
I'll have to
hurtful to
see.
the community when you guys have blown us off. That's hurtful.
And I guess I'll say I respectfully disagree that
There's
it's going
multiple
on.
issues, though. I think that's the thing.
So-
I think people would be a little more forgiving and understanding if it was isolated or a one-time thing, right? But these are multiple serious issues and concerns. And the fact that we have so many OCR cases is outrageous, absolutely outrageous.
Mr. Kowalski and then Jackie.
What's particularly bristling for me is to hear talk of retaliating against a teacher that was protecting students. Hear that labeled a mistake. You guys all stand behind that? That was just a mistake? Is that what we're saying here?
I think you're oversimplifying what we're saying.
Just to make the point, the first OCR case that we filed in January, the big one, that the parent had trouble with Stargate for years and years and years and had begged and begged and begged for help. And for us to come in to even file an OCR, again, in Adams 12, which is my home district, that's a very, very big deal. So just to put it in context, this idea, that first OCR complaint that opened up kind of everything, it didn't just suddenly, happen. I mean, we tried so hard to not do that, but it was egregious, it was over the top, and it is important, the parent needs to be heard that this was something that was years in making, and it wasn't like one isolated incident and then we jumped in and filed.
So is Stargate the only one with OCR complaints in Adams 12?
It's the only one with 7, probably in the state of Colorado and possibly in the history of Colorado.
So I'm not trying to cut you off, but this is meant for questions. This isn't a This isn't an open
Yeah, I'm happy to talk.
forum here, so if you guys want to have a discussion about this, I don't want to.
Agree.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna take like 2 more questions, okay, and then. Oh, sorry.
So to recall a board member, you need a petition of 10%, and then once that petition follows all the pathways that it needs, you need a vote of at least 30% of members. Well, so you need at least 67% of voting, sorry, I'll just read it. 30% of all members eligible to vote do vote, and at least 67% of those voting vote for the removal of the director. So it's just like changing the bylaws, actually.
But one thing that actually I think is somewhat important, and Jan mentioned it, but I want to highlight it. When we redid the bylaws in 2015, those percentages were higher. And we as a board actually said, it's too difficult to recall someone. It's too difficult to make these critical decisions. So we actually were the ones who suggested and recommended a lower rate. So, Jan?
But just to follow up with that, who would pay for that? Because elections aren't free. So then, if an angry, parent wants to recall board members, who funds that? Does the school have to pay for that?
The school
has
has
to
to
pay
pay
for it.
Yes. Yeah, so, Terry, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
I do have a question. Actually, it's more of a comment. I've brought my husband to a couple board meetings. He actually doesn't come anymore because he's like, why? They're not going to change things. He said that in 2 meetings that he sat in. And I keep coming. I brought issues to you guys, didn't settle my issues. I still have concerns. I've been retaliated against. So other staff members that I have seen that I've known have come to the board. You guys have not done it. You can't say that you don't know these things aren't happening. Because they are happening and people have come to you about it. So for you to say that we should trust the board, I want to. I come to the meetings. I still am here. My kid wants to stay here. It's hard. It's very hard knowing how we have tried to fight. And I don't feel like we've got the answers. I just don't.
Okay, and I'm sorry you feel that way, obviously.
But there's a lot of parents that feel that way.
Okay. So I'm gonna, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, I just keep saying, trust the board. It's very hard to trust the board when you know things are happening and you guys
So I said there was 2 more questions. We're at 8:30. We've been doing this for 2 hours, so I'm going to stop here. I really want to thank everyone for coming, for participating. If you have questions that we didn't answer, please feel free. It's governance@stargateschool.org, and those emails go to each and every one of us. So please feel free to bring us any questions or things that you want us to talk about. Thank you.
I'm gonna look it up myself. No, I'll look it up. I don't need an answer.